slain. Allied tower destroyed. An enemy has been slain. An enemy has been slain. An allied inhibitor is under siege. An enemy has been slain. Allied inhibitor destroyed.
What's going on, everybody? It's Killswitch coming back for another Teacher Tuesday episode. I know we missed last week. I had some stuff come up, so I apologize for that. But with that behind us, let's get moving forward with this one. Again, I appreciate all the love for the channel and everything. I'm constantly seeing new subscribers and stuff. Ton of views on the teacher stuff, so I appreciate that, and I'm hoping it's helping you guys. Again, I pretty much say this in every video, but if you got any suggestions or any feedback for me, shout it out in the comments. Just let me know. I'm very open to the feedback. So, but without further ado, let's jump into our Teacher Tuesday. So this week I'm going back to like a brawler bruiser type. Gonna
Worth
do
a shot or two.
Khaimera. So what we'll do is we'll do what we usually do here. We'll briefly kind of glance over these stats here. Again, this doesn't really tell you a whole lot other than level 1 values basically with no items, so nothing too crazy going on here. Just briefly going over this stuff just to see, you know, what your values kind of look like here. But let's go ahead and jump into the actual abilities and stuff like that. So, starting with his Q, that's going to be his Unleash ability. So, your next 5 at all levels, basic attacks within 3 at all levels, seconds, are at maximum attack speed. Deal 55, 62.5, 70, 77.5, and 85% at max level of your normal damage. So basically what that means is, for your next 5 basic attacks within 3 seconds, so it's kind of on a timer, 3 seconds, are at maximum attack speed. So basically your maximum potential attack speed, your next 5 basic attacks will swing that fast. And then each of those attacks will deal a little bit less damage depending on what level you are. At max level it's 85%, so it's not a huge hit, but good ability. This is kind of Khaimera's bread and butter. This is what allows him to deal quite a bit of damage in a short period. You'll pretty much spam this when you can, like if you're fighting in team fights, if you're fighting other heroes, like even if you're fighting just jungle camps or buffs or whatever. It helps to clear so much quicker. It helps to kill things so much quicker. So basically if that's up and you're fighting, you should be using that. It doesn't cost hardly any mana to use either. Max level 60, so it's not hurting you to use it. 9-second cooldown at all levels, which that's not too bad at all. Yeah, basically if you're fighting something and this ability is up, use it. It will tremendously help you. Moving on to the next ability here. That's going to be his E. That's his Berserker's Spirit. So, gain 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20 at max level stacks of Spirit Regeneration if you currently have none. If stacks are present, consume them to gain 0.9 1.3, 1.7, 2.1, and 2.5 bonus basic attack damage per stack for 6 seconds. And so Spirit Regeneration stacks, we'll cover that in his passive, so I'll kind of jump back to this a little bit. But basically, in a nutshell, his Spirit Regeneration stacks are they go along with his bread and butter, so that's what makes Khaimera so good and sustainable in the game. But I'm not going to touch too heavily on this yet. I want to cover the passive before I do any of that. So I'll basically just giving you this and I'll come back to it. So we'll move on to his next ability here. And that's going to be his ultimate, his R. So Bestial Wrath. So suppress an enemy hero for 1 second at all levels, dealing 250, 350, and 450 damage, and displacing any nearby enemies. And you also gain 6 at all levels stacks of Spirit Regeneration. So again, it's pretty simple. We'll cover the Spirit Regeneration stuff with the passive, and then I'll kind of come back and show you like all this stuff. Like I'll put it into context for you basically. So but suppressing an enemy hero for 1 second, I mean, it's not a long time, but it is basically a crowd control effect in a sense. You're gonna be able to stop the enemy from using an ability or anything like that, so it does come in handy quite a bit. The damage isn't anything to laugh about either. It's got 80 physical power scaling down here, you see, so cooldown is at max level 50. That's pretty good. Mana cost 75, so it's not very high. And you'll displace enemies around. So like if there's enemies within the I don't know if it's in the 500 range unit that they're displaced or if that's how far they're displaced, but it's a pretty good range. You'll definitely notice it. It kind of bounces them up and out of the way, which keeps them. Basically, if somebody was gonna come in, like say a steel was gonna come in and try and stun you out of that ability, it would knock him away from you, basically. So that's a helpful part of the ultimate. So, all right, so moving on to his left mouse button here. That's just his melee attack. That's auto attack. Nothing crazy. Nothing really to go over here. Moving on to the next ability. That's going to be his right mouse button. That's his ambush. So leap to an enemy hero, dealing 80, 120, 160, 200, and 240 energy damage, and slowing them by 30% at all levels for 2 seconds. So that's a really good ability. That's basically he just jumps to an enemy within was it 1100 units, so pretty good. It's a good ability to use for securing a kill. I see a lot of people use it as an engage. Sometimes that's fine depending on who you're going in on, like what enemy you're going up against. I would say that if they don't have like an escape ability of some type, it's fine to engage with this, but I like to save this for the kill secure, for when someone's running away from me. I like to be able to jump back to them and finish them off. But sometimes it's okay to jump in with that too, especially if you're going up against like a really squishy enemy. Like say you're going up against like a Bellica or something who has no escape ability. The only thing she has is her knockup, right? Well, if you know she's already used her knockup, feel free to jump in with ambush, use your ultimate to keep her in place, and then just swing away for the finish, or you know, however you got to do it. But I see a lot of times people come in for a gank and they'll just automatically jump in on the enemy with this ability. And I think it's better used, like I said, for the kill secure when they're running away, because, you know, there's a lot of times whenever you gank and you'll get an enemy really low within 1 or 2 shots, but then they get away from you. It's nice to have that ability on hand. You know, 1100 units is a pretty good range to be able to jump to somebody. It's well out of your auto attack range, so that's just kind of something to keep in mind. If you're going in against a really strong ADC or something like that, you might have to use this ability to engage, just because they have so much range on you. Like, by the time that you actually get to them, they might already have half your health down. It's just something you'll probably run into every once in a while, especially with like a twin blast or something like that, who can just wait until you're within range and then dash backwards to keep you at that auto attack range for themselves. So there might be times when you do have to use this as an engage, but ideally you're able to come into the fight and just start swinging, and then save that for the secure or something like that. Notice it does say energy damage, but it does have physical power scaling, so it's really kind of a strange setup. I wouldn't really buy too much into this anyways, because this isn't going to be like really your main damage dealing ability anyway. It's just, I think it's just kind of there just because. Now, again, something to note here is that on this ability you get 3 spirit regeneration stacks when this ability is activated, and again, we'll cover that in just a minute. Cooldown 12, 11, 10, 9, and 8 seconds. So an 8 second at max level cooldown, that's pretty good. That means it's going to be available to you pretty frequently. Mana cost is only 50 at all levels. That's pretty good. None of Khaimera's abilities are mana intensive, so you don't really have to like do anything extra. Like, you don't have to worry about running out of mana that often, especially if you're clearing your jungle camps and stuff. You'll get mana back and all that. Nothing too crazy to worry about in that regard. So let's just go ahead and move to the passive. So his passive, Spirit Regeneration. So gain stacks of Spirit Regeneration for successful basic attacks up to a maximum of 20 at all level stacks. Stacks last 2.5 seconds at all levels. And the ability or the gain from that is you'll gain 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and 3.5 at max level health regeneration per stack. So essentially what that means is every attack that you land, every basic attack that you land, as long as it's within 2.5 seconds of each other, will keep your spirit regeneration stacks. And while you have those spirit regeneration stacks, you're going to be gaining this amount of health regeneration bonus based on how many stacks you have. So at 20 stacks, if you're max level, you'll gain 3.5 health regen for each one of those stacks. So that's pretty huge. Basically, what that means is Khaimera is literally, in every sense of the word, like, he needs to stay in the fight to be as impactful as possible, I should say. So the longer you can sit there and swing at something, the better. He's a perfect candidate for like soloing an objective, like Prime or something like that. Not saying you should, I'm just saying he's the prime candidate of, if he's able to just sit there and swing on something, he's basically never going to die. Now he does fall to CC though, so that's something to keep in mind. If a Steels comes in and CCs a Khaimera in the middle of his regeneration stacks, that hurts him, because he's not able to fully regenerate any of those stacks, and typically there's somebody else on the other side also hitting him, so he's not able to regenerate any health and he's getting hit. What makes Khaimera so good is he can usually take quite a bit of punishment and still be able to stay in a fight, as long as he's within his range of attacking. So That's the biggest thing I think that makes Chimera like what makes him higher skilled, what makes a really good Chimera separated from like just an average Chimera player or whatever, like being good with him really revolves around knowing this part of his kit, knowing when you can go in, knowing what stun or crowd control abilities have been used, knowing when to use certain abilities, because he doesn't have an escape. He doesn't have any crazy like crowd control. He has his ultimate, which is kind of a like it can save you in a pinch, but he doesn't have any like protective abilities per se. You have to work around this passive. So, and something to remember is with each one of these abilities, they do give you spirit regeneration stacks typically when you use it. His jump gives 3, his ultimate gives 6, and then we're going to jump into his E ability for this reason. So his E ability, if you remember, when you use this ability at max level, you get 20 stacks of spirit regeneration if you have none. So basically, if you have 0 stacks, you haven't even started a fight yet, you can pop this ability and you'll automatically get 20 stacks, which that's max, right? Max is 20 stacks. So this ability can automatically put you in an advantage in a fight. Knowing when to use it, knowing what abilities the enemy has used, again, is going to maximize this potential. If you use this, let's say you're going to fight, say you're going to join a team fight, and you're getting ready to jump in on a backliner like a Bellica or something like that. You pop this, you're going to gain 20 stacks. You're in a good spot to start that fight. But if you get knocked up or stunned or whatever it is, this was basically for nothing, because now, since you're not able to perform an auto attack in 2.5 seconds, this is going to be kind of worthless to you. You basically just wasted this ability. So it's a great initiating ability, but you also have to be aware of what's going on in front of you, or what's been used, or what hasn't been used for that matter. I try and use this if I know 100% there's no chance of me getting removed from that fight. I'll pop this and use it. If I know that there's a potential to get stunned or knocked up or removed from the fight, I'll actually sometimes hold on to this and bait out a stun or a knock-up. And as soon as that stun or knock-up is baited, I'll pop this immediately to get myself back into the fight, basically. I'll pop this and maybe leap onto them to re-engage or something along those lines. Like that's the kind of stuff that you have to really be aware of when you're playing Chimera, is that his success pretty much comes from being able to stay in those fights to like maximizing your health regeneration in those fights. A couple of seconds can make all of the difference. So that's just that, his play style obviously is brawler. A lot of newer people especially kind of see it as just like, oh yeah, I can just swing away, like I don't die, I'm super tanky. Well, yes and no. It seems that way. Like when you have your health regen stacks high, it seems like you're just really tanky. Like, oh, they're not doing any damage to me. Well, it's really because you're just regenerating health constantly while you're fighting. If you get stunned, knocked up, removed from the fight, and a good enemy team will know that with a Chimera. So they'll know, like, hey, we got to put a stop to his healing. Somebody stun him. Somebody hit him with something. Dash away. Like, disengage for a second. That's basically why his passive is so big for his kit, because his whole success, his whole everything that he does revolves around this. If you're not able to manage this properly, you're not gonna have as successful of a time with him. So just keep that in mind. Remember that at all times. When you're playing in game, down in the bottom left, you should have a passive indicator down there, and it will tell you how many stacks you have at any given time. Always kind of be aware of that. And then always be aware that your right mouse button and your ultimate will give you 9 stacks to start. So if you do decide to engage with that, you'll have stacks to already begin your fight. And then popping your Q with max attack speed, that's going to stack up that's going to get you your stacks really quickly as well. Just think your next 5 basic attacks, that's 5 stacks too within 3 seconds. So like, just these are all things that you got to remember when you're playing Khaimera. He's not just a W key for win, even though sometimes it seems that way. There's a lot of things that can counter a Khaimera, and you got to be aware of them when you're playing him. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the build guide and the aspects and stuff and the items. We'll go ahead and cover aspects first. I know I've been forgetting these in some of the videos, so I apologize for that, but I'm going to remember these from now on. I'll give you what I use and kind of what's the best, or like what are some good options basically for your aspects. Being that Khaimera is a brawler, bruiser, tank, I mean, he's kind of just one of them like bruising, brawling, beefy melee fighters. You know, we've got quite a bit of them in Fault, so the green aspects are obviously going to benefit him. But sometimes you can tech play some of these to be a little bit more like fit more into a niche in a way. My go-to with Khaimera, and depending on the enemy team comp, like if you're playing him jungle, like Beast Hunter's obviously just really good. Like Beast Hunter and even like King, so you'll gain 4 attack speed and then 2 for every 20 CS, blah blah blah. That's gonna help him build his stacks, and you'll also gain damage the lower health you are too, which, I mean, you would think like as a Khaimera you don't want to be low health. Well, true, but that's, you know, part of the game is playing around things that aren't exactly like you don't think they're gonna happen, but they do. They happen. It happens plenty. So I like King Beast Hunter as just kind of a baseline. If you're playing jungle, it's a decent way to stack some attack speed, and then also that desperation ability helps in the low health situations. It helps you because a lot of times you're not low health. Like once you're low health, the enemy team's already kind of kit dumped you, like CC, stuns, knockups, etc. Like they've kind of already used that, and that's why you're low health. So now you kind of have free reign to start attacking. You'll deal more damage, but you'll also be getting those regeneration stacks back, so it's kind of a good combo. I do like Beast Hunter, Aggressor, and Rogue as well. I don't think they're necessarily as applicable, but with any jungler, essentially, I mean, these purple aspects, for one, if you put favor points into them, you're going to get physical power bonus. Like, that's great. But with Rogue, you know, you've got damaging an enemy hero 3 times within 2 seconds, deals 20 to 160 damage, and that's based on your level, plus 40% of your physical power and energy power scaling. And that deals a flat amount. Basically, it's like an on-hit effect for your basic, essentially. That's like a huge just like damage buff, like one-time thing, and that happens every 30 seconds. Like, that's a good ganking ability that can help you secure a gank or a kill with that extra bit of damage. And then your next basic attack deals bonus physical damage equal to 3 to 6% of the target's maximum health. So again, this is giving you basically like a timed bonus to an attack, allowing you to be a little bit more offensive. Now, is this worth a trade for like a King or a Beast Hunter? That's kind of up to you to decide. I mean, if it's jungle, I'm saying probably not, unless, I don't know, unless maybe their team is really low on CC. Maybe they don't have a ton of crowd control where you're going to be able to kind of swing a little bit more freely. maybe you run this in Rogue or Aggressor or something like that, you know. Aggressor basically giving you movement speed through the fog walls, and then when you're in enemy territory, gaining physical power based on level. That could be big. Another one to bring up here is Rook, because CC is a thing, and it's pretty meta right now. So taking 10% of your max health and damage within 2 seconds increases your physical and energy armor by 30% for 3 seconds. That's pretty good, especially if you're taking, like, if you're the frontliner, if you're the sole frontliner, this you'll proc this pretty regularly. That's an easy proc. And then you'll gain, I know it says 0, but it's a set amount of, or it's like a formulated amount of physical and energy armor for 4 seconds when hit by crowd control. And that can stack up to 10 times. So, and the duration refreshes on additional instances of crowd control. So that's like big for a character who falls to crowd control, or if the enemy team is going heavy on the crowd control abilities. This could come in handy quite a bit. I mean, this might be able to keep you in the fight. It might mitigate enough damage for you to still be able to sustain in the fight and be able to maximize your regen stacks again, or whatever it may be. Titan is also a good one. Titan is pretty good for just about any like brawler type. Typically, I won't use Titan and Beast Hunter if I'm going jungle. It can be done. You can do it. It's just typically I like to try and get something. I like to get favor options. So like health is a good option, but like having like a red or a purple faction will give you like the attack speed option for your favor, or the physical damage out of the purple. Like, it just kind of depends, right? I mean, obviously like double green is probably a safe option to go with, but it doesn't give you a lot of like options as far as like what points you want, or what side you want to put your favor points into. So something to just keep in mind. But I do like Titan for him. So after taking damage from an enemy hero, gain health regen equal to 0.6 times 0.50% of your missing health for 10 seconds. So kind of gives you just some added health regen, and then you receive 2% of your bonus health as adaptive power, which is also pretty good too. Because with Khaimera, we'll get into the build here in a little bit, but building health on him is pretty good because of his sustainability. You don't necessarily have to build as much armor and stuff like to make him be able to sustain, and Titan can kind of help that. I would use like Titan if I was playing like Khaimera off lane, probably. Like I'd use like Titan and Rogue, or Titan and Aggressor, something along those lines. Maybe even Titan King. But yeah, those are pretty much like, that's where your bread and butter is going to be as far as aspects go, is green, purple, and red, and more specifically like King. You could also go Ace. Like, it's possible. It just honestly, your aspects really just come down to how aggressive do you want to be. What's your play style? What do you want your play style to be? Do you want it to be more defensive? Are you the only frontliner on your team? Maybe you go all green. Are you the jungler and you have a really tanky off lane and a steel support who's building fairly tanky? Maybe you go a little more on the damage side. Maybe you go Rogue, Beast Hunter. Maybe you go Ace, Beast Hunter, whatever it may be. You know, just those are things you just gotta kind of like play to what you're playing against. Like, what are you gonna need in a pinch? So, all right, so let's get into the item build for Khaimera. Khaimera jungle, you're basically, your starting kit is going to be essentially the same with a little bit of a tweak. All junglers are going to start with an affliction, and then, you know, it builds into the other options for afflictions. But typically with a jungler, you're going to take an affliction, a health pot, and a rad pulse. Well, with Khaimera, you can actually do something pretty interesting here. You can take this affliction, but with his health regeneration, you really don't need this health pot. Because, right, I mean, the health pot becomes useless basically after, 5 minutes anyways. Like, after you get a few levels, like, you really don't have a need for this anyway. So, what I like to do with Khaimera is I like to buy this Affliction, I like to buy the Rad Pulse, but instead of using the 150 on this health pot, I'll buy 2 Sentry Wards. And so, basically what I'll do is at the very beginning of the game, I'll take these Sentry Wards, I'll go place one in my blue jungle, and then I'll take the other one and I'll place it in my red jungle. That's so that I know if anyone is going to come into my jungle. For one, it helps the ADC and the support, or the offlaner, depending on which side of the map you spawn on. But if you're spawning on where your red camps are on prime side, you putting that sentry ward in your blue jungle is going to help your ADC and your support, because they're going to know if someone comes behind into the jungle for a wraparound gank or something like that. So I like doing that because that's much more valuable for a Khaimera than this health pot. That's the beauty of Khaimera as a jungler, is you don't need that health pot, that health regen, and those 2 sentry wards, you get much more value out of that than a simple health pot. So that's something to just keep in mind there. Health or Affliction, Rad Pulse, and the Sentry Wards. So once you have those, though, basically what you're going to want to build into, and the safest option for Khaimera to build into is basically just your first item. You can straight go into your upgraded Affliction if you want to. Like, that's like the safest option, right? That's 2,000 gold, early power spike, gives you a little bit of health and some cooldown reduction. That's an easy one you can build into first. Like that, you're not going to lose a ton if you just finish this off first. Again, with the boots part of it, I don't like finishing my boots first, but something I do like to do is, if I have the gold, I do like to buy the first set of boots, just to be able to move a little bit quicker around the map. Like if I back and I have enough maybe I have enough to buy this leather satchel here, but I don't have enough to finish this Reign of Fervor. Maybe what I'll do is, if I have enough, I'll just buy the first set of boots and then go and do some more camps and look for some more kill opportunities, and then I'll come back and finish this. I never really finish the boots and probably till like 2-3 items in, unless I have enough gold to finish it, and I don't really like have enough gold to do anything else. And typically the boots you're going to want with Khaimera really just depend on the situation. And that kind of goes with all of the junglers / like bruisers, melee fighters. Really, what boots you buy is just going to depend on the enemy team comp. If they're heavy on the CC, like casters and stuff, you'll probably go inertia wraps. If they're just heavy on attack damage, you might just go into the stoic greaves. I rarely ever use the shades steps, but it is an option, since having a movement speed on Khaimera can help you get to places quicker, help you get into fights quicker. It's something to keep in mind. I don't really love the Boots of the Hunt on Khaimera, just because it's not giving you any defense, and he kind of already has like a quote unquote attack speed built into his kit. So like, yeah, it'll help, but I think that these other options, especially earlier on, are going to give you a much needed bonus to your sustainability. So, but again, that's kind of like an up to you thing. Look at the team comp that you're facing and kind of make that decision based off of that. As far as the Affliction goes, I like going into the Reign of Fervor over the Almighty Gale. I think Almighty Gale is a really good item, but I just typically lean towards the Baleful Armor, which is kind of like the bigger version of this in a sense, based off of like the passives and stuff. It gives you the same crushing presence that Baleful does, but I just think Baleful is a better item in general, because this only gives you some health and cooldown and then the passive, whereas Baleful gives you the armor, the health, and the passive does a little bit more per tick as well. So I lean that way, but that's really just personal preference. you could do either one of these. I just think having the power early on is a little bit better for Khaimera, since his sustain is pretty good early on. Moving on from that though, like a good like first full item outside of like your boots or your affliction, you can always run the Sword of Souls on him as well. That's one of those. This is an item right now that's like pretty popular for a first item for just about any melee fighter, just because of how good it can be once you get stacks, especially with, you know, when you're clearing minion waves or camps or whatever. Like, you're just gonna keep stacking this basically. So if you're gonna use Sword of Souls, I recommend buying that item first. Like, don't even upgrade anything else. Don't buy into your affliction, don't buy your boots, just straight use whatever gold you have on Sword of Souls. Reason for that is because your components are 1,000 and 850, and this component here has 2 sub-components, but this one doesn't. So this item's actually pretty expensive, and early on with the gold gain that you get, 1,000 and 850, like, that's, unless you're getting like free ganks left and right, this will take a little bit of time to get to, and especially if your wave clear, your jungle clear isn't as maximized as it should be, it'll take a little bit of time to get to this. So these gold cost on these components might take you a little bit of time. Plus, even if you have these 2 components, there's like no third option to lower this cost of the final item. So basically, after you get these, you're still going to be looking at, was it 1,050 gold to finish this off? So you're looking at 3 big chunks of gold spend right there. I would just build this first. Preferably, if you can buy the Shadow Strike first, I would go with that, because that's going to give you the better like stat. It's going to give you the best like power spike, quote unquote, if you will, early, and then go into your bayonet if you can, and then finish. Like, I would back pretty much as soon as you get to where you can finish this off. I would just back and get it, so that you can start stacking immediately. That's not to say, like, if you're in the middle of an objective or a team fight, or if you're like clearing your camps and you clear one in blue side and you have enough, that's not saying like don't go ahead and just go clear the other camp so that you don't have to like go back to that side for one camp. Do it obviously like in an efficient manner, but I would say as soon as you have enough to finish this, you know, when you're finished with what you're doing, I would back and get it if you're going to use it. Now, if you're not going to use Sword of Souls, I love going first into Demon Sword on Khaimera. This is such a good item. It's probably like right now one of the best items in the game for bruisers. Physical power, cooldown reduction, health, and being able to shred enemy armor and healing in the process. Like, that's basically like everything you want from a bruiser. Such a good first item. If you go first, you'll see the power spike that you get from using this like immediately. It'll immediately return its value to you. You know, in a lot of my videos I've covered Stem Gauntlet as being one of the best items for bruisers. I don't see it as viable on Khaimera, just because you're not necessarily spamming your ability. The only ability you're spamming, or the only ability that you're consistently using, is your Q. The other abilities are more like situational, and you want to save for certain situations. So you can't always rely on the Stem Gauntlet for Khaimera. Another good item too for him is Fist of the Titan, because again, look, you're getting physical power, health, and attack speed, and you're getting an on-hit effect with the basic attacks. So again, that's right down his alley. I like this card. I don't use it a lot on other brawlers depending on the situation, but Khaimera is one of the ones that I do use it on quite a bit. I like the on-hit effect, and then I like the stats it gives, so it's a good one. U-Mantle, also another really good card, just in general for any bruiser, but I like it on Khaimera because of the health, the physical power, and then the overdrive. It's just another protection. It's another way to keep you in the fight. And that's what we're trying to do with Khaimera. We're trying to keep him in the fight. And so you've noticed that all of these items are kind of just physical power, health. I try and stack as much of that as I can to be as efficient as I can. But there's going to be times where you're going to need to stack more defensive items into your play style. Like, there's going to be times where maybe you get your Demon Sword, you're doing good, but the enemy team finally catches up to you, and they start crowd control, you know, stunning you, knocking you up, and you're having a hard time. Well, that's when you're going to maybe want to start stacking into some of your defensive items. Ring of Rejuvenation is great on Khaimera. Health, energy armor, cooldown reduction, and you gain some endurance for the crowd control. And you heal 8% of your max health over 4 seconds after being hit by hard crowd control. That's pretty big, especially for a hero like Khaimera who needs to stay in the fight. If you get removed from the fight, i.e. crowd control, at least you're getting some health back for getting hit, and you're getting some endurance to the CC. So that's a good one. Another good one is Fountain of Invigoration. So you'll get some health, some energy armor, some health regen, some cooldown reduction, all great things to have. And then on top of that, it's going to increase all your healing received by 30%, and that includes his spirit regeneration stacks. So that is something that can almost be like that item in and of itself, even though it doesn't give any offensive stats, that item right there for him can just be insanely good, because like, worst case scenario, you're basically just at full health all the time. As long as you're like swinging, like you're clearing camps, you're clearing jungle monsters, whatever, you have to go to a lane to help somebody. Like, basically if you're hitting something, you're going to be regenerating health at all times, and that's huge for Khaimera. So I love this item. It's a little bit more of a defensive play, but I think, you know, like, depending on the situation, like, I think it's a must buy for him. I wouldn't say necessarily like early, maybe like third, fourth item, something like that. But it's there and it's great for him. Some other options too. I like Thorn Shield on him. Just because, like, as the frontliner, as a Khaimera, you're just going to be taking shots. I like being able to reflect it. That passive that reflects, like, so basically every time you get hit with a basic attack, you're going to deal 18% of your armor as energy damage. Now this works better when you're a little more tanky, but I still think it's a good item to buy, especially if you're going into like a tankier build. Like if you're going into a Baleful and a Blighted, maybe you go Demon Sword, Baleful, Blighted. You could always go into Thorn Shield too. I mean, it's a good item, but obviously if you're going to go into more of the Bruiser style, like Demon Sword, Fist of the Titan, U-Mantle, Cleaver, which I haven't covered yet, but that's another good one for him. And either of the Cleaver items are good. If you're going to go into more of that type of build, maybe not necessarily go into Thorn Shield, but if you're going to go the regular tanky route with the armor and stuff, Baleful, Blighted, Ring, Thorn Shield is a good option because it's going to allow you to put out damage even when you're not in the fight. So something to keep in mind there. And then, like I mentioned, the Cleaver items are both really good for Khaimera. I like the green one, since Khaimera doesn't really need lifesteal. Like it would be nice, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't necessarily need the lifesteal. The green Cleaver is pretty good in the sense that you're getting health, you're getting physical power, and you're getting attack speed, and then you're getting that active basically to deal a certain amount of damage in a radius. That's pretty good, and you increase your cleave damage. You could do either one of these, honestly. I mean, they're both really good items, so if you're going for the more bruiser build, those are two I would definitely look into. Outside of that, you can do like some tech plays or like some situational plays, like you could do a Fate's Gunblade on him. Fate's Gunblade is just a good item in general, but it's a little bit more of like if you need that spell shield, really, when it is what it comes down to. The energy armor's good, the penetration's good, and the power's good, but it doesn't necessarily give you any health stats or anything like that, so that would be more like, that's kind of a situational item to buy. Same with like a Knight's Battle Plate. Like it doesn't give you any offensive stats, so it's a good item. But with Khaimera, like playing, the more defensive you play, the more like the less damage you're gonna deal in the long term. Like sure, staying in the fight is gonna be huge, but if you're not hitting very hard or anything, it's gonna be difficult to really like secure kills. Like teams are just going to be like, oh, he's building tank Khaimera, like he's just full tank, like we don't even really need to worry about him, since he doesn't have any like crowd control abilities per se. Like he's not locking down an enemy team, so like teams might just ignore you and go straight past you to the back line. You need to be an offensive threat enough to pull attention away from your back line, so something to keep in mind with that. Outside of that, though, item-wise, like, it's pretty open. Those are, I think, the best options for him. You've got other items that, you know, potentially could do things for you, like a Demonic Embrace or something like that, and Light and Saber. But really, like, if you stick within that realm of, like, items with the health and physical power, build a little bit of armor or something, and then maybe a fountain, like you're gonna be fine. It's just really understanding the kit, understanding what your goal is, understanding like you need to stay in the fight as a Khaimera. You need to be able to sustain yourself. What's the enemy team comp, and you know, what are they gonna try and do, etc., etc. So you can kind of build off of that. I still say Demon Sword's probably your best bet for a first item. You're gonna get that value back regardless. After that, you can kind of go into playing off of what the enemy has. So it's just, you know, I always say these items are pretty situational, and I love the fact that we have the ability to change our builds on the fly. I know a lot of people would like the idea of being able to have pre-builds and stuff, like saved builds, to go into the game so they don't have to think about it as much. I like the what am I building next, you know, part of this. If I'm ahead and I'm like, man, I'm really hitting really hard, I can go into some more damage or just get really tanky or whatever, you know. I love that I have that option. I'm not stuck into like, you know, one group of items or whatever. So, but that's typically how I build him. I'll start with a Demon Sword and then start going into something based off of the enemy team. So, alright, so with that being covered, that's probably going to wrap up this video here. I'd like to say again, thank you to everybody for the subscriptions, the likes, the comments, the views, everything. I appreciate it all. Although that's not why I do this stuff, but it is greatly appreciated. I plan on, again, barring any crazy stuff going on in the world or in life, I plan on doing these every Tuesday. So stay tuned. If you have any suggestions, or if you just have some heroes you want to see next, or any, info that you might find useful, let me know and I'll see what I can do about getting you some content for it. I plan on branching out a little bit with these Teacher Tuesdays as well, maybe doing some like in-game stuff, some role specific stuff, maybe even some like basics of like, covering things that brand new players might need to know. So if you've got anything like that you want to see, literally just throw it down in the comments. I'm open to all of it. I read every comment, and typically respond. So With that being said, guys, I appreciate it. Again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy and hope it helps. Later, guys.